Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and today we're going to make the Lend and Borrow block. It was published for the first time in the Kansas City Quilter in 1932, which was a newspaper that used to publish quilt patterns, and you can buy some of those old ones on eBay if you're ever looking for those. Today we're going to take this block. It is very hard. I will tell you it's advanced. We're going to use H375 paper and H125 paper by Triangles on a Roll. So this is going to make 3.75 inch half square triangles, which go here. This one's going to make 1.25 inch triangles, which go here. And I would only recommend doing this with triangle paper because this is a very intense block. I'm going to sew with 2312 Aurifil since it will blend in nicely and it's kind of a medium between the two colors. This fabric is Maria Sky by Betsy Chutchin. This is a free block pattern, and if you want, you can turn it into a table runner, lap, twin, or queen for a low price PDF at Fat Quarter Shop. So let's start this pattern and cross your fingers that all our points match. To follow along with me, go to fatquartershop.com and download the free block pattern, and you can follow along with me. I've already cut all of my fabrics, and we're going to start with step 1, and we're going to make 40 1 3/4 inch finished half square triangles. To do that, I'm going to move this out of the way since that's our larger triangle. To make 40 half square triangles, you need 20 individual squares. So if I cut a piece just like this, that is 5 by 4, that gives me 20 squares. This is going to make 40 half square triangles, and the best thing about it is there's no waste. So we're going to start with our fabric A and fabric C squares, and again, this is Betsy Chutchin fabric by Moda Fabrics. We pre-cut these rectangles. You want to put your fabrics right sides together. That's the biggest step here. Then we're going to place this on top, and we've given you just a little bit of wiggle room out here so that you don't have to worry about having the paper right on the edge. Now, the most important part when you're doing a lot of half square triangles like this is keeping your paper flat. You want to make sure when you're pinning this, you just get this nice and flat. The flatter the paper and the flatter the fabric is, and the flatness of this does matter, so you want to keep it as flat as you can so that your triangles come out the right size. So what we're going to do is go to the sewing machine. I'm going to lower my stitch length, and I'm going to start on one side and stitch on dotted lines, and I'll probably go this way, this way, this way, this way, and then I will turn and go this way. That is what is easiest for me. Now, there are arrows that you can follow on the triangle paper, but I generally just ignore those and just kind of do one side at a time. So 1.5 stitch length, stitch as close as you can to that dotted line, and we're going to have 40 half square triangles. And as I'm moving from right to left, I'm going to flatten my paper just to keep it nice and flat. Now that we have this all stitched, we're going to cut on the solid lines. What I prefer to do is cut the outside lines and then work with the inside lines. I'm going to use a rotating mat today. I'm using the Kimberly's Cuts mat. I'm using the Kimberly Cuts mat, and it's going to rotate nice and easy for you. Try to cut as close to that line as possible for more accurate results. And that's all the waste you have, so that's amazing. That's why I love triangle paper. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually cut this. I'm not going to try to cut all of this at one time. It's just too much. So I'm going to do this section first. I'll probably just do them in sections because I feel like if you cut all 40 at one time, it's just going to move around too much and your accuracy is going to be not as good. So I'll probably start in the middle, go to one side. Okay, now this kind of moved, so I'm going to move that out of the way and I'm going to cut these on the diagonal. On the diagonal, this is your seam allowance, so it doesn't have to be accurate. Now here, I'm going to cut each of these individually since it moved. And I'll just put them on the side once they're done. And just taking it in increments is really helpful. So on here, I'm going to see how much I can keep together. Now see, I'm going to put my finger over here. That kept it from moving. So when I'm using triangle paper, I just use the normal blade that I would normally use when cutting fabric. I don't change blades, and it's going to keep it about the same as if you were cutting fabric. So I just treat my rotary cutter just like I'm cutting with fabric. And then I change my rotary blade. Like when you start cutting and stuff doesn't cut all the way through, that's when I know it's time to change my rotary blade. So we've got all of these. Now we can have fun and pull the paper off. Super easy because this triangle paper from Triangles on a Roll is really great paper. So all you have to do is pull the paper off. There's a couple of things you could do if it's not working for you. Is you could fold this back on the crease and then pull. It's up to you. And we're going to have 40 of these, so I'm just going to pull the paper off real quick, and then we will move to assembly. And on this one, it didn't cut all the way through, so I just trimmed it real quick. And now we can go iron all of our half square triangles. I'm gonna iron these in little batches. I'll just do maybe 5 or 6 at a time. So first I set my seam by just putting my iron on my triangles for about 5 seconds. And then we're gonna press these towards the cream or the tan. And I leave the iron on about 5 seconds. And then I'm just gonna add the next one right on top. And that just keeps the heat going all the way through to the bottom. From here, I'm going to set these aside and put this clapper on them. That's going to keep the heat. The wood keeps the heat in, and it makes it really nice and flat. And just keep doing lots of batches. Now I'm going to move my iron out of the way. And on all of these half square triangles, I'm going to trim the dog ears off. Now that we have these half square triangles done, I'm just going to put them on my design board off to the side. And to be efficient, I'm going to do the next triangle papers that we're doing, but it's much easier. You'll take a fabric B and fabric D rectangle, put those right sides together, take the 3 3/4 inch finished triangle paper. We're going to cut 2 squares off, so 2 versus 20, much easier. This is washi tape. You can just take it off and place it right back on. And put this on your paper, pin in place. And we're going to do the same exact thing, except this time we only have to stitch on 4 lines. So we'll go to the sewing machine and do the same thing. We'll cut this the same exact way, and we will even press the same way. So anytime you're making half square triangles with any method, if you've got these little dog ears right here, you want to cut them off so that when you're sewing to the next piece, they don't get in your way. And now we can start assembling our block. Take your fabric E rectangle, place one of your small half square triangles just like this, where it is going this way, where your dark is this way. Put them right sides together, pin in place, and we're going to stitch this with a 1/4 inch seam, and you will make 4 of these. Now you'll switch your 1/4 inch foot and we'll go iron. When we are at this step, we're actually going to press open. So I like to set my seam, press to one side, and then press open. The reason I don't press open without pressing to one side is I'm likely to burn myself. So I'll let that cool just a couple of seconds, finger press it open, and then do a final press. And when you're pressing open, using the clappers, is a great way to get this nice and flat. You're going to do that step until you have 4 top units that look just like this. And this is a great way to check yourself, just to make sure they're all going the same way. And if one's turned, you can fix it now. And the next step gets a little bit harder because we start assembling half square triangles together. And I'm going to follow my pattern, and we're going to make side units. We're also going to make 4. And we're going to position them this way. Cream, cream, cream. So what I will do is put this right sides together, pin, and we will go sew these 3 together. And now I actually need to change my stitch length to a 2.0. I forgot to do that in the previous stitch. From here, I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to press using this quick press seam roller by Lori Holt. And I'm going to press to this side so I don't have to get up and iron, just to save a step. And that's ready. Just add this one, pin it, and we will stitch again using a 1/4 inch foot. When you see arrows in the It's Sew Emma or Fat Quarter Shop patterns, that means that's the direction you want to press your units. And so if you look, I have pressed just like that. And you're going to make 4 of these side units. And again, whenever I do something like this, I put them all next to each other because it's easy to see if one is turned the wrong way. And now we can move to our next unit. Now we're moving to this step. We've already done the half square triangles, and we did that previously so that it would all just take a lot less time. I'm going to take a fabric F rectangle, put it on the left. I'm going to take one of our large half square triangles, make sure it's aligned this way according to the pattern, Then I'm going to add my side unit to this side, and I'm just going to look to make sure everything is the right direction, and it looks like it is. So I'm actually going to pin this in place on the left. I like to pin on the left, the right, and in the center. And you can see how nice this lines up because we use triangle paper, so it comes out the exact size and you won't have to mess with the sashi not fitting. So here I'm going to double check this again to make sure it's going the right way. Put this together. I'm actually going to pin on this side because I prefer to sew with the fewer seams on top. And we're going to go sew both sides. Now, like I mentioned, you can stitch on this side with this up, or you can stitch on the other side. I prefer to stitch on this side and put the bulk on the bottom. Some people prefer to stitch with this on top so that they can try to get their 1/4 inch to hit right in that little section. I somehow have better luck doing it this way. So you should try when you're making these blocks and see which one works better for you. Now I'm going to check and make sure all my points did not get chopped off before I go iron. From here, I'm going to make sure to set my seam. And it is very important to set your seam here more than other times because you really want it to be flat when you press this way. If you don't set your seam, it's going to be harder to get it flat. We're going to press toward the left side. And we have our center unit done and our top unit done. Now we just need to work on our bottom unit. You need to make 4 of these for each block. To move to the bottom unit, we need 5 of the small half square triangles, so I just lay them on my board. Make sure they're going according to my pattern. And I'm going to actually put these 2 together. And we're going to sew this seam. I'm going to put these 2 together. We're going to sew this seam, and we're going to do the same technique we did with the other small half square triangles. And I keep my design board with me, so it keeps everything in its place. So from here, I'm going to look at which way I should press, and I'm going to press this way. So I'm just going to finger press and use the seam roller again, lay it back down. And if you press according to the arrows in this pattern, all of your seams will nest, which will give you a nice pretty block. So from here, I just need to sew this seam and this seam. So I will just put these right sides together, and I like to keep my pattern with me on my design board so I can remember what I'm doing. And this one, I will just add right here. And we can press. So again, I'm going to set my seam, press to the right, set my seam, press to the right, set my seam, press to the right, and we'll make 4 of these for each block. Now our block is composed of 4 units, so we're almost done with those units. So we're going to place the middle piece, the top piece. So we'll place the center unit, the top unit, and the bottom unit. And you just want to make sure that they're all going the same way as the pattern. And then we're going to pin these two together and sew. To pin, I'm going to show you a little quick method. What I'm going to do, of course, is pin on the right, pin on the left. I kind of always start there. And here, you want these two triangle points to touch. So I'm going to put my pin in the point of this triangle, and then the point, it actually isn't in the point, so I'm going to fix that. And then put it in the point of this triangle. Let your pin sit straight up, push it down so that it's touching. Pull your pin out without moving and put that pin in. And then pin again. Now on this one, you're going to want this point to touch this point and this point to touch this point. So I'm going to do the same thing, except this time I prefer to stitch with this on top. So I'm going to pin the left and right and then the points and the center. Pinning will give you really nice results, especially if you're working with a lot of really small pieces. So again, put my pin in the point of this unit and the point here. Do the same thing here. And we will cross our fingers once again and hope that everything lines up. I'm going to do that one again. And we're going to sew those final two seams. When I'm stitching, sometimes I use my finger as a stiletto to keep my seams down. Using a stiletto is safer. I'm just used to doing it. Before I go to the iron, I'm going to see if everything meets, and everything meets except right here. It needs to be sewn in just a tiny bit more. So I'm just going to put this back in the machine and sew it a little bit over to the left. And that's better. So here I'm going to set my seams. I'm going to, again, press to one side, and then I will press open. You've got a lot of seams that are going to touch when these units go together. And you can press open to start. I have just found that I have burned myself too many times to do that. So I'm going to press to whichever side is the easiest to press toward. And at this point, you want to make sure you're not rocking your iron, because you've got a lot of seams here and you don't want to stretch them. So from here, I will press open. And again, I will finger press and then lie the iron flat. And I just do that so that I'm less likely to burn myself. And I will tell you, if I was making this quilt at home, I for sure would burn myself at some point because there are so many seams. But you're going to have a beautiful quilt. And you're going to make 4 of these units. Now we'll put our block together, and I'm going to follow the layout on the pattern. And let's see, this is the way it is laid out, but I'm going to show you some different options. So this is how it's laid out with the triangles on top. But there's lots of stuff you could do. You could do a big star just like this, and that would be beautiful. If you put your quilt together like this, you would want to make sure you do that polka pin method in all of these. So I'm going to put it back the way it was, but I can show you another way. You could do this also. So there's lots of options you can do. I'm going to try to follow my pattern though and go back to the normal way. That was based off of the Kansas City Star newspaper, and I'm going to put these right sides together and these right sides together. We're going to pin the entire intersection and we're going to stitch down this row. And again, I will pin the left and the right. And then here, I just want to make sure they line up. I'm going to leave a thread between and not cut my threads. I'm going to check out my seams right here. Ooh, pretty. Pretty. So we're going to go iron that and do the last seam. So looking at your units here, you've got less seams here and more seams here. So it's easy to press this way rather than the other way. So leaving these chained together, I'm going to set my seams, press to one side, and then press open. So I would definitely say this is an advanced block, but what you could do is make one block and make it just a centerpiece if you want to try it out before you do a big quilt. And once you can get all these seams right and going, you can make a bigger quilt, and just don't take on more than will overwhelm you. And you might be surprised with that triangle paper how easy this is. It's very intricate, but if you take your time, you can have really nice results. Now this looks like it got ironed a little bit over, so I'll kind of fix that. Now here I've left that chain together, and the reason I did that is I won't have to think of where it goes, because this is the right way. So all I'm going to do is put this right sides together, pin in all the intersections. I am going to cut this little string off here, this little thread off here, because when we press open it needs to be cut off. So I'm going to do the polka pin method in the center. And when you're doing the polka pin, if your seams start falling apart here, that just means next time use a shorter stitch length. Each machine is a little bit different. And then just go through, and any of these that do line up, you can try to line up. Now I would prefer to stitch on this side actually, so I'm going to change my pins. I prefer this side up. I think most people sew the other way actually, but that's okay. I'm getting good results this way, so whatever works best in your sewing room for your results is what you should do. And we've got one last seam. one last press. Now I do want to show you, I'm going to show you what it does if you don't set your seam. So if you go like this, see how it's not that flat? It's puffy. So it is important to set your seam, especially when you've got so many seams in a quilt. You will have so much better results, even if that's just one thing that you do different. So here, if I was going to leave this as a table topper and not add it to the quilt, I would leave it just like it is. But since the quilt, the blocks touch, I am going to press open according to the pattern. So you can always keep that in mind when you're looking at a pattern. Keep in mind what your end use is going to be. I'm going to trim the sides here just to get it nice and straight, but I will place my 1/4 inch line on my Creative Grids ruler with each of my points. So when I cut, very little is coming off. I'm just trimming a tiny bit. Just be really careful. If you cut too far in, your block will become distorted when you add it to the quilt. And this one has a lot going on, so you could actually skip this step if you wanted to. Thank you for joining me for this classic and vintage video for the Lend and Borrow block. If you love using half square triangles, we have another classic and vintage video called Ocean Waves that you will also love. We would love to know what kind of colors you're going to use in your quilt. Share them with us on social media with our hashtag, but more importantly in the comments, tell us what color you're going to make so I know what your quilt's going to look like. Thanks for joining us at Fat Quarter Shop, and I'll see you next time.